You ever stop and think about the kind of invisible architecture that shapes, well, everything around us? I mean, from the coffee you grab in the morning to the job you go to, it's all built on this massive legal foundation. So let's do it. Let's grab the blueprints and really unpack how American law is put together. So, where do our laws even come from? It sounds like a simple enough question, doesn't it? But wow, the answer, it pulls back the curtain on this incredibly complex and honestly fascinating system that's been built up over centuries. To really get it, we have to start at the very beginning and ask, why do we even have laws in the first place? All right, so before we jump into the who makes the laws and how they're made, we have to get a handle on the why. See, the law isn't just a big book of things you can't do. It's the actual foundation that lets our society function at all. And it really boils down to four key purposes. First things first, laws establish standards. Just think about something simple, like a speed limit. It's a clear line, right? It defines the bare minimum for safe behavior we expect from everybody else on the road. It creates a common ground for how we all get along. And naturally, those standards lead right into the second point, which is all about maintaining order. When everyone knows the rules of the road, and I mean that literally with traffic, but also figuratively in business, society just runs more smoothly, more predictably. It's the system that keeps everything from just flying into complete chaos. Let's be real, people disagree all the time. We all have different needs, different values, different goals. So what the law does is provide a formal, and this is the important part, a peaceful way to sort out those conflicts. It doesn't matter if it's a small fight between neighbors or a huge battle between giant corporations. And finally, this one is arguably the most important function, especially in a democracy. The law acts like a shield. Its whole purpose is to protect our fundamental rights and liberties from being stomped on by anyone, whether it's other people, powerful companies, or even the government itself. Okay, so now we know why the blueprint exists. Let's start looking at the actual framework. Where do all these rules, the ones that set the standards, keep the peace, and protect our rights, where do they actually come from? It all begins right here, the U.S. Constitution. This is the absolute bedrock of the entire American legal system. You got to think of it as the ultimate rule book. Every single other law, every regulation has to play by the rules laid out in this one document, period. This pyramid really lays out the whole power structure perfectly. Up at the very, very top, you've got the U.S. Constitution. It's the boss. And then everything else just flows down from there. You get federal laws passed by Congress, then state laws, and finally, all the way down at the bottom, you have local laws. It's a clear chain of command, you know? It's designed so that a basic set of rules applies to everyone, but it also lets states and towns make their own rules for their own specific needs. But here's the kicker. If a state law and a federal law ever clash, federal law wins, every time. Now, this is something that trips a lot of people up, but the difference is so important. Congress passes a law. That's the what. For example, a law might say we must have clean air. Okay, great. But how do we do that? Well, that's where regulations come in. An agency like the EPA creates the specific rules, the how, like the exact emission standards that factories have to follow to meet that clean air goal. So we have laws from legislatures and regulations from agencies, but there's another huge source of law, judges. And it's based on this really powerful idea called precedent. Just think of it like a ref in a basketball game. If they call a foul for a certain move in the first quarter, you'd expect them to make that exact same call for that exact same move in the fourth quarter, right? Well, that's precedent. It ensures the law is applied fairly and consistently over time, so everyone's playing by the same rule book. And this is a perfect example of how that works in the real world. A court in South Dakota made a ruling about internet sales tax in one specific case. At that moment, that decision became the binding precedent for that state. That meant every other judge in South Dakota had to follow that rule. So a single court case created a new reality for thousands of businesses, at least until the U.S. Supreme Court eventually stepped in and set a brand new precedent for the whole country. All right, so we've been talking about the big, abstract structure of the blueprint. But how does this stuff actually work on the ground? Let's zoom in on one of the most practical places where the law has a huge daily impact, the world of business. And here's the most important thing to get. Business law isn't just for some dramatic courtroom showdown. Nope. It's the invisible ink on every single contract. It's the unseen rulebook for every person you hire. It is the framework for every single product that gets sold. It's literally everywhere. And the scope here is just massive. We're talking about everything from contracts, which are basically the legal promises that keep our entire economy humming along, to intellectual property, which protects the amazing ideas and inventions that drive innovation forward. It covers how you hire people, how you compete fairly, and how you make sure your products are safe. It touches every single part of a business. And because nobody wants to go through a full-blown court battle, they're incredibly expensive and take forever, the legal system has these built-in off-ramps. We call it alternative dispute resolution, or ADR. These are ways for companies to solve problems using things like mediation or arbitration, which often saves just a staggering amount of time and money. So let's wrap this all up. If there is one thing, one single thing you take away from all this, it's that this legal blueprint isn't some dusty old document locked away in a museum. Not at all. It's a living, breathing system that is constantly being fought over, reinterpreted, and changed. And here's a pretty wild example of how that evolution actually happens. Most of us think the Bill of Rights is about protecting us, individual people. But over the years, the courts have decided that a lot of those same protections, like the right to free speech, also apply to corporations. And this is probably the most famous and controversial modern example. The Supreme Court's decision in Citizens United completely changed the American political landscape. By ruling that a corporation spending money on political ads is a form of free speech, it just opened the floodgates for corporate money in elections. It's a huge reminder that just how we read the blueprint has massive, real-world consequences for everyone. So yeah, the law is never finished. It's always playing catch-up as our society and our technology change. And that leaves us with one last big question. What's the next major challenge on the horizon? Is it going to be about artificial intelligence, data privacy, maybe something we haven't even thought of yet? Whatever it is, you can bet it's going to force us to pull out this blueprint and start drawing some new lines.